question I've seen come up is how crypto is trackable. If it's trackable, and if this ransom were to get paid, could it be tracked?
Yeah, so crypto investigations are interesting because they almost seem like a contradiction in that most crypto transactions are publicly available. You can see what transactions took place, you can see where they went. The hard part with them, though, is that unlike traditional transactions with a bank, there's not necessarily an identity piece tied to it. So oftentimes you can see crypto transactions done very anonymously, and depending on whether or not the actor takes good security measures, it can be very easy to lose track of, okay, where did this actually go? And if they take the right measures, you might never know who was actually involved in the transaction.
When the money's in the wallet, it's trackable, but as soon as it leaves the wallet and goes to wherever, it's out in the ether now. Is that how it works?
More or less, it kind of depends on what type of wallet that you're using. So there's two things. We call them hot wallets and cold wallets, right? Hot wallets are somehow connected to the internet. So that could be, hey, I've got my crypto stored on an exchange or through this particular service. There's also cold wallets where you could store it on a hard drive or even a piece of paper. If you have it on a hard drive or a piece of paper, very difficult to track, right? Much harder to track. And the other thing is that depending on what type of coin you're exchanging and on what exchanges you're on, most of it is public, right? So you can see, okay, whoever this person is with this wallet ID traded with this person with this wallet ID. I might not know who either of those people are, but you can usually track the chain of custody. The problem comes when they go and they put it through what we call a mixer, which kind of jumbles up that forensic trail, then you can lose it. So you can lose trails in a couple different ways. One, maybe this person takes their crypto offline into a cold wallet, they put it through a mixer, or they use some other obfuscation tactics to make it a lot harder to see that publicly available chain. And speaking from experience, you would be shocked how dumb sometimes very smart criminals can be. So you'll have criminals that have a very tech savvy element to them. They're very familiar with certain elements of it, but there's a couple of things they get wrong. And you even see that with cyber operations. Somebody is smart enough to infiltrate an organization, deploy ransomware, and request the ransom in Bitcoin, and then they mess up something on the cryptocurrency investigation and they get caught. So, yes and no, you can assume that there's a reasonable level of tech familiarity at the very least, but are they as smart as they think they are? I guess is the question that you're really asking at the end of the day.
Is cryptocurrency used a lot for illegal content? Is that kind of become more of a common thing for criminals who are trying to do certain things online, the dark web, whatever it might be?
Oh yeah, so I mean, in terms of that, dark web and the criminal underground, they were way ahead of the curve when it came to cryptocurrency because of the decentralized nature of it, right? I don't have to worry about banks and kind of these centralized platforms dealing with it. I can process all these transactions offline and I can do them anonymously. That's obviously very appealing for illicit activity for obvious reasons. So cryptocurrency has been very widely adopted on the dark web, illicit platforms for quite a long time. As a matter of fact, in a way, cryptocurrency becoming more mainstream now with legitimate users is probably a bit annoying in some ways to criminals because tracking and investigative capabilities are starting to catch up because of how ubiquitous it's becoming.
Can you explain how that kind of works, how they were able to get that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the specifics of it, but I can speak to maybe why it was more difficult because I've seen some people kind of be like, hey, they had the footage, why didn't they just turn it over? In reality, the business model of a lot of these companies, right, is hey, we're going to provide the hardware to you. You pay the one-time price for the hardware. You can look at the live feed whenever, but if you actually want us to store video for you, we are going to charge you for that because storing video on a server is not inexpensive, right? It requires a good amount of money to store because videos are just very large files. So in this case, it seems like what happened is, hey, she was not paying for the camera company to store that video. So by default, they probably weren't storing it where they typically store things, right? It apparently was somewhere, probably in short-term storage that gets cleared after a few days or a few weeks. That, but so frankly, I was impressed that they were able to recover it because I would think that if somebody wasn't paying for the service, they might just delete that stuff immediately. So much of it depends on how they transfer the funds, right? Like what do they do with it? Um, I do think that the likelihood of them getting caught if they slip up is pretty high just because of the amount of eyes that are going to be on this, right? Federal investigators, local investigators, and even just internet sleuths who are going to be monitoring that wallet that they posted now. There's going to be so much attention there that if they really don't nail it from an operational security standpoint, they're going to put themselves in quite a bit of jeopardy. But without seeing how it plays out, it's very difficult to tell. Oftentimes in these types of cases, it's, hey, they think that they laundered it enough and then they transfer it to an exchange that has their identity tied to it, or they accidentally, they're able to find, hey, we found that this wallet maybe is really clean, but it's always trading with these other two wallets. And this one has some identifiable information on it that we can tie back to them. So based on this cluster of activity, we can surmise that these are all probably owned by the same person or people. So those are kind of the typical ways that you'll see people actually get caught is they move it somewhere it's not supposed to, or you see this cluster of activity that allows investigators to kind of bunch together a bunch of wallets that they might not think were associated.
Without, giving advice or, going into specifics, how hard is it for someone to make sure that they've dotted their I's, crossed their T's, they make no mistakes, and they can get away with this? Is that difficult for just a normal person to try and do?
Probably on your first try, yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you know where to look and you've been in this world for long enough, you can probably develop the know-how and, run in the right circles to get that information. If, you thought up this idea a few weeks ago and you are planning this, kind of ad hoc and the cryptocurrency element was just something that you thought was a good idea, that could make it that could make it harder.